Hello, I'm Philip Stoughton. I am at CATEX, Festival of Electronics, and I'm joined by Klaus from PRIMEPULSE. Klaus, before I'd heard of CATEX, I hadn't heard of PRIMEPULSE. So just give me the kind of 30-second background and introduction to PRIMEPULSE and what your kind of momentum is in terms of investment strategy.
Yeah, so as PRIMEPULSE, we are IT and tech investors. Originally, we founded an IT company. I led it over 25 years as CEO. And 4.5 years ago, I started to get out and do my own investment company, which is PRIMEPULSE. So we try to do IT and tech investments and things in German B2B with some complexity.
Okay, and you've had a huge success with CATEX, initially growing to that critical momentum, critical mass, really aggressively quickly through acquisition, and then the IPO, which was perfectly timed to get you through a very expensive component crisis. What was the strategy there? What made you recognize the EMS industry as an opportunity?
Frankly, we looked for interesting acquisitions. So we found a company called Stecker in Memmingen. That was the first step out of, we acquired CATEX and we took the name CATEX, so that's where we are now. We liked the EMS environment because it's very comparable to IT service environment. It's not so much manufacturing, it's more service. Getting 100 pieces and fix them together to one piece is more logistic than manufacturing. And we are in a deep tech, it's not real deep tech, but what I mean is deep tech in a very technical environment. It's not development of deep tech, but it's very technical environment, close to deep tech, what we see a lot in Munich and southern Germany with complexity, and so we liked that environment.
Yeah, and you have various other companies in related sectors, and I was really fascinated to see projects and how you highlighted how different companies were able to help each other. One of the technologies that you're invested in is AI, for example, and I think within the EMS industry we're trying to figure out how to use AI, so having both of those companies within your portfolio should allow you to accelerate in those areas.
I think the main accelerator for CATEX is that as more you do AI, as more electronic you need. Because you need a processor and something like that in everything. So I think you shouldn't maybe not think too much about what can you really do with AI. It's just to be the winner in an industry where you get more and more tech in it, and tech means electronics and so on. So that's why the EMS industry itself is a winner. The only thing is how can you make money in the EMS industry, and that's more difficult because just doing what everybody's doing, that's too easy. You don't get good profits for that. So what you really need is then to find products where you have a unique know-how which you are doing yourself, maybe some IP, maybe some software on top, and then it's starting to make fun.
Yeah, and it creates that added value. What I like about CATEX is they are prepared to think outside of the box. They're not in the rigid lane that many EMS companies have found themselves in, which is a rigid lane that has a very narrow margin span. They're prepared to think outside of the box, and to me that's very appealing to modern brands, modern OEMs that really want help with that whole supply chain, that whole manufacturing ecosystem, all the way from order to fulfillment with the customer.
Yeah, and you know, there's more and more complexity. Our customers, they have their own problems, things to develop, getting AI into their product. So they need their engineers to get time to get them free from the work of just engineering the electronics. So that's something we get in from manufacturing electronics to engineering electronics. And if we do a good job, you know, we find a product where we develop for a customer and we tell them you can get it cheaper, but then it's maybe our IP. If you don't see it as your key IP, give it to us. We do the job cheaper, and then we take that IP and scale it to other customers. And that's how we develop from manufacturing to more engineering and hopefully to more software company.
Yeah, and then you get into this field of white label product, which I think is really interesting because you're using your manufacturing intellectual property, you're using your supply chain intellectual property, and you're using some product intellectual property to really shift that value proposition that's important. You talked about AI being one of those factors that's causing growth in the electronics industry. Obviously IoT is one of those, electric vehicles is another. Do you see those as factors that really protect the electronic manufacturing space against any recessive trends that you see perhaps in the consumer market?
I think yes. You know what is a recession? It's 1% minus in BIP. Yeah? What is 1%? It's cleaned up by inflation. So if we have 6% inflation and 1% minus, that means we are growing nominal 5%. And in the markets where we are in, the growth is going, so we don't grow 5%, we grow 8%. So we anyway have to have an growth, independent of we have a recession or not. The only problem is inflation, it's also bringing up our costs. So we have to make sure that we have costs related to the sales growth, but that's not so difficult to drive. You know, as long as you're in a growing market, it's not so difficult to manage it.
No, as long as you're growing the market and you're doing a great job with your customer. And Klaus, you and I have enough grey hair to recognise that these cycles come and go. I think some of the generation that have been in the industry for 10 years perhaps haven't seen the number of ups and downs that we've seen, but it will pass as they all do. Klaus, thanks so much for your time. Very much enjoyed your presentation and look forward to chatting again soon. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.